Hey guys, welcome to Hughes History. In the next 10-15 minutes, guys, we're going to take a look at kind of an essential question that's really important in United States history, which relates to the Constitution. And that is, how does the U.S. Constitution allow the United States flexibility? Flexibility! Yeah, this is really, really big, guys. Total thematic essay on a kind of state exam at 11th grade history. Something you should probably know anyway. And probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 multiple choice questions that can pop up on this bad boy. And this is really a thesis, you know. The underlining idea here, again, is that the Constitution, right, which is the rule book of the United States, runs the country, is the directions. If it was a board game, it would be the directions. Is written in such a way where it, you know, absolutely limits the federal government. That's a different lecture, like the 10th Amendment and checks and balances and kind of what keeps power, you know, tight. But then there's this other kind of opposing concept, which is what allows for things to happen that maybe we didn't plan on. What allows for the federal government to take responsibility over some issues that weren't either around in 1787 or which the country decides through its representation that the United States needs to deal with. So fundamentally and ideologically, you know, Americans are kind of have opposing viewpoints here. Some Americans believe that the Constitution is kind of like the Word of God and that you don't mess around with it, and that the words are the words, and that the Founding Fathers are somehow enlightened in writing texts that should never be interpretable, which should be read kind of, you know, black and white, word for word, like that. And then there's another school of thought, which is more, that's kind of the conservative school of thought, a liberal school of thought, which says that the Constitution needs to be read flexibly, because the people that wrote it back then we're writing it with the idea in mind that we would need to advance as a nation and look at things differently. And, you know, we don't know what we don't know. No cell phones in 1787. So let's take a look at, you know, now that you get the thesis down, the Constitution is flexible, which allows us to change with society needs, blah, 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 blah. That's the thesis, right? That's what you start off with, flexibility, change, yada, yada, yada. Now we look at the specific mechanisms or vocabulary that are associated with that concept of flexibility. And there's 4 bad boys. Yeah, four vocab terms, 4 ideas, 4 mechanisms, which give us that flexibility in the Constitution to deal with issues that arise. So let's go through them one by one. So there's one right there. I'm going to pick it up, come back, and throw it up there for you. There it is. It's right here. Rubber bands. Yeah, this is the elastic clause. Say that, the elastic clause. Not Santa Claus, the elastic clause. And I know that my kids, hopefully if you're watching this and you're one of my kids, it's already in your head. You've already said it. Because this is one of those memorization terms, where if you just memorize it and say it like a mantra enough, you'll have that fuel for a thematic essay, the details that are necessary to get a better score. And that would be, Congress shall make all laws necessary and proper. That's the elastic clause. Congress shall make all laws necessary and proper. I'm going to say it, and then you probably should say it back. You know, it does help to repeat things. A little bit old school, but it works. Congress shall make all laws necessary and proper. Congress shall make all laws necessary and proper. Congress shall make all laws necessary and proper. Good, you did it. Booyah. Yeah, a couple words are really important there. All is pretty big word there. And if you watch guessing strategies, I generally say to avoid those 100% absolute types of terms like all and never and absolutely, and, you know, these terms you really can't escape from. All Eskimos love the snow. I don't know. But all, you know, is in there. You know, Congress shall make all laws necessary and proper. So that fundamentally, that elastic clause, And sometimes some of these powers are kind of called implied powers, that the Constitution implies that you have the power because of the language in Interstate Commerce Clause, the Elastic Clause, but we'll get to interstate in a second. But in the Elastic Clause, definitely is kind of going against the 10th Amendment. Kick a chair. Yeah, if you kick a chair and you remember it's the last seat in the restaurant, like the last amendment in the Bill of Rights, the 10th Amendment, what do you call the last seat that you save somebody? You reserve it. So, the 10th Amendment clearly states that all powers that are not delegated, given, right, to the federal government, federal state, federalism, right, that they're reserved for the states. Psych, Congress shall make all laws necessary and proper. So that's a kind of, a conflicting thing in federalism, is the idea of the 10th Amendment on one hand, states' rights and states' power, and the flexibility that you find in the Elastic Clause. So if Congress passes a law, let's say a seatbelt law, or Congress passes something like the Social Security Act of 1935, you go find where it says that the government will control retirement and make sure that everybody's taken care of when they're 65 in the Constitution. It ain't there. And most of the New Deal programs and the Great Society programs like Medicaid and Medicare, or the CCC, the TVA, the FDIC, the Securities Exchange Commission, all that stuff really is Elastic Clause, that we're dealing with the Great Depression, that we're dealing with extreme poverty, and that it is necessary and proper to have these types of programs. But what about the 10th Amendment? I don't know. Seems like you got an essay on your hands there. So Elastic Clause, without a doubt, is probably the easiest one because of the stretchiness of the word elastic, which will hopefully align your thoughts with flexibility. But now you know the actual words. Remember them? Remember them? First word. Who has the power to write laws? Congress does. So Congress shall have the ability. Congress shall make all laws necessary and proper. One more time, guys. Right? Congress shall make all laws necessary and proper. Go. All right, let's move on. We're ready for the next one. Let me spin so I know we're switching gears here. Watch this. Hey! Ba-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum. 2/3 of both houses, 3/4 of all states. Ba-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum. 2/3 of all houses, 3/4 of all states. If you learn that beat, ba-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum-bum, 2/3 of both houses, 3/4 of all states, you know the main process for amending the Constitution. I so wish I had a pencil. If I had a pencil, I'd point to the eraser. This is what we call the pencil and eraser concept. Talk about change. Talk about flexibility. You can't do this with Holy Scripture. You can't do this with the with the Quran or with the Bible or with the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? You can't just rip out pages and put them back in. At least now you can't. Maybe 1,500 years ago you could. But nevertheless, the Constitution comes with a pencil and eraser, right? How cool is that? And this is the amendment procedure. You already know the Bill of Rights, right? That was included at the end of the Constitution. It was amended at the convention in order to gain anti-Fed support. So right away, we know we can add things to the Constitution if we think we're done, but we're not done. So when they thought they were done and the anti-Fed said, what about my rights? They added 10 amendments. And then they put a little asterisk that said, if you need to, we'll leave you the pencil, right? And the eraser, because sometimes we have to get rid of old amendments. The only way to change fundamentally the text of the Constitution is to literally change it, to amend it. Ba-bum-ba-bum-bum-ba-bum-bum-bum. 2/3 of both houses, 3/4 of all states. 2/3 of both houses, that's pretty big. And I'm just going to warn you, there's other ways to do this. State conventions and nominating national conventions, and just get one way and then you'll be pretty good. And this is the way that's been used, I think, but one amendments, maybe the 19th Amendment or Prohibition. One of them was through a different mechanism. But all the other ones got 2/3 of support in the House of Representation and 2/3 support in the Senate. And that's really hard to do. And then it goes to the states. 2/3 of both houses, 3/4 of all states. Can you hear and feel the federalism? Federalism is the division of power between the feds and the states. So if we're going to change the Constitution, then we're going to need to go to the federal government and to the states, both participants in this family, this country of federalism, to get permission to change that document. So 3/4 of the states, today that's like, I don't even know 3/4. That's 67? Wow, that's crazy. 67, there's not 100 states used. What would it be? I don't know, 36, 37? It's a lot of states to get permission from, after you've gone through both houses of Congress. So it's really, really difficult to change the Constitution, and that's why if you hear politicians kind of throwing that up in the air, let's change the Constitution, ban abortion, ban gay marriage, limit terms for representation, all of that stuff, really, really difficult to do, especially in today's high-charged partisan media environment. So good luck changing it. But we've changed it 17 times, which means there's 27 amendments. Oh, Bill of Rights, 10. 17 times, 27. So let me just give you a couple of examples, because there's another lecture online on your DVD series that's going to go over this, the specific amendments and how to remember them. But, we can look at the 13th, 14th, and 15th, kind of the biggest examples occurring after the Civil War. Free citizens vote, right? That's how you remember it. 13, free slaves. 14, citizenship and equal protection. 15, vote. 16th Amendment, graduated income tax. 17th Amendment, direct election of senators. 1821, drinking ages in American history, prohibition. 22nd, 222, no more than 2 terms. 26th Amendment, 2 plus 6 is 18, 18-year-old vote. They even have the 27th Amendment, where if you give yourself a raise, you don't get the raise till you get reelected. Direct democracy. But these are things that we amended the Constitution to do. The right to vote for women. I mean, when we have these grand ideas like, duh, women should vote, how could they not think of that to 1920? Well, people thought about it. Then you can change the actual document yourself, and that's flexibility. I'm going to throw another one in really quick, because, we could say 4, but I could argue 5. I think interstate commerce is also an aspect of flexibility. Remember, the Interstate Commerce Clause, which was kind of enforced in Gibbons versus Ogden early on in the Marshall Court, is a mechanism where Congress has the ability to regulate anything that has kind of an interstate feel to it or an interstate definition to it, meaning that the activity or the procedure goes between 2 states. So easy things would be like highways, rivers, airplanes. Those types of things give the Congress the ability to regulate them. So flexibility would come in interpretation. So for instance, if you take something like drug law in the United States, and we have the 10th Amendment, which says basically that, look, drugs are in the federal Constitution, therefore, kick a chair, did you remember? Reserved for the states. I can argue that drugs transfer state lines, especially illegal drugs. If you take cocaine or marijuana or heroin or one of those drugs, they obviously are not going to stay in one state. So if you smuggle or grow, say you grow drugs, marijuana in California, where it's legal for medicinal purposes, the government's going to say that that drug is probably going to cross state lines, or some of it is. Therefore, Interstate Commerce Clause gives us the ability to regulate it. That's why in California, the DEA can still get you, even if you're obliging state law, because of that Interstate Commerce Clause. So for those of you that are stretching out, going for 5s, you can argue it. Interstate Commerce Clause is another aspect of flexibility. But it's not a huge one. Let's go on, all right? Definitely Elastic Clause, definitely ba-bump and a lump up and lump bump bump, 2/3 of both houses, 3/4 of all states, amendment procedure, pencil and eraser. But let's go through a couple more. Let's do unwritten first. Unwritten is just tradition. Unwritten are things that we do pretty consistently in the United States that aren't in the Constitution, so they're kind of developed practices. Is it the law that you open presents on Christmas? No, it's not the law. You just do it, right? Or Thanksgiving, that you have a big dinner. I'm a vegetarian, so I don't eat the turkey, but some of you eat the turkey, and that's tradition. But nevertheless, those are kind of like unwritten rules of family, They're not laws, but we all, basically, most of us do them. So in our government, we have those types of traditions and laws. So I'm going to be brief. I just want to give you really the multiple choice answers, and you can go from there. But some of the multiple choice answers would be the 2-party system. We've kind of always had fundamentally 2 major political parties. We've had third parties pop up here and there, the Green Party, Bull Moose Party, Populist Party, the Grange. But nevertheless, pretty much since the beginning have, Feds, anti-Feds, Feds, Democratic, Republicans, and then we had Democratic, Republicans, and Whigs, and then Democrats and Republicans. So the two-party system, which Washington warned us against because of the factionalization and the partisanship, the one-sidedness of each party, was probably not going to lead to great compromise. But nevertheless, that two-party system is kind of part of that unwritten Constitution. The presidential cabinet, right? Flexibility comes in the idea that we didn't think of writing that into the Constitution, that we should have advisors around the president that maybe the Senate will confirm and the president will get to nominate. That's not in the Constitution. It is for judicial branch. They get nominated and they go to the Senate. But cabinet members, Hillary Clinton is Secretary of State, she had to go to the Senate, right, and get approved in order to be Secretary of State. Those rules that say that and that have the cabinet in place with the check, that's all unwritten. So that's an example of when we flex-sized ourselves using unwritten, which is a concept, not really something in the Constitution, in order to change. Really quick, other ones, no two terms up to the 22nd Amendment. The president stepped down after 2 terms through tradition because of Washington's words at his farewell address. Filibuster, you can't do that one. Judicial review, that's going to lead us to the end of the lecture here. Judicial review is unwritten. That's not in the Constitution either, but through developed practices. And we're going to just kind of turn into that right now. So unwritten, tradition, two-party system, the presidential cabinet, no 2 terms until the 22nd Amendment when we write that sucker down. And lastly, judicial review, which is unwritten and its own topic. How cool is that? I'm so excited. Judicial review, baby. Judicial review comes from Marbury versus Madison, one of the first Supreme Court cases that the Marshall Court heard way back in 1803. And basically what they did in that court case is they gave themselves steroids. Not really, but they gave themselves the power that they're going to use for the next 220 years, right? And on so. Judicial review, which comes from Marbury versus Madison, they gave themselves this power, is the ability for the court to check federal law and later state law and actions of the president. I really shouldn't say that. That's original, I guess. But nevertheless, I'm mixing you up, ain't I? Let's stick with the basic idea here. So if Congress passes a law, let's say they pass a law like I'm blanching again, guys. Let's say they pass a law like the AAA in the New Deal, the Agricultural Adjustment Agency. This is elastic clause. Congress wants to lower the price of, raise the price of crops to make sure that farmers are making a profit. So they start to come up with a program to subsidize or give money to farmers not to grow food. Sounds like a good idea, at least economically for the federal government, but when it's challenged, the Supreme Court can look at that and then look at concepts of the Constitution, the words of the Constitution, and determine whether that AAA is legal. That's not in the Constitution, that ability, the ability to do judicial review. Judicial review, this is kind of the dance that I do. One hand, always the Constitution, right? The rule book. And in a sense, the judges are acting like referees. So if it was the NFL, it was like a guy landed on the line, right? He caught the ball. And now the judges, the referees, are referring to the NFL rule book to find out what specifically does it say about 1 foot on the line and 1 foot out. And then they get to determine, especially if it's not clear word for word, what that rule is going to be. So Supreme Court cases, like here's a great one. Let me give you one. Here's a great one, and I don't have it. I have a lot of ones that do actions. Plessy versus Ferguson, which they get wrong. This is the Separate Car Act in Louisiana, where the court is looking at that idea that can southern states segregate, keep their citizens separate by law, or does that violate something in the Constitution? Now, it does. It violates the 14th Amendment. No state shall deny its citizens equal protection under the law nor due process. But it's the court that interprets that. And they get it wrong. They say separate is equal. But why do they say separate is equal? Why would you say that nonsense? Because you got to deal with the word equal in the 14th Amendment. That's the referee's job. So in a sense, it's like no hitting in football. And then, the referee sees a move where somebody gets hit in the back of the head, and they look at the rule book and they go, Hitting means front face slapping. So if you hit him in the back of the head, you're good. It's that interpretation that is judicial review, and that's flexibility. So abortion laws, which states created, way back when, they're going to be overturned, and the new rule is going to be that you can't limit a woman's access to abortion, at least in the first 3 trimesters. That rule is created not by Congress, not by the amendment procedure, not by the states, but by the Supreme Court through judicial review. That's flexibility. That's meeting the needs of a changing society. And you could disagree and say that's activist and the court goes too far doing that, but that's the dance that the court plays with the Constitution because of judicial review. And I guess if we don't like it, we should elect different presidents that nominate different judges and different senators that wouldn't approve those types of judges. But all part of checks and balances. So that's it. The Constitution is flexible. Do you got it? Let's go over the 5 really quick, right? So what are you going to write about, and what do you have to know for multiple choice? You need to know the Constitution is flexible because of the elastic clause. Congress shall make all laws necessary and proper, right? Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, minimum wage laws, food and safety laws, the Meat Inspection Act. I could go on. Second, ba-bump and lump bump and lump bump bump. Pencil and eraser. 2/3 of both houses, 3/4 of all states. You got it. Federalism needed to change the Constitution, right? 3, I threw in Interstate Commerce Clause for those of you that are with me and you get that and you can do that. Marijuana laws in California being trumped by supremacy or federal laws using Interstate Commerce Clause. You also now have unwritten Constitution, right? That's your flexibility through tradition. Like maybe we should have a group of advisors like the cabinet. Maybe they should get approved by the Senate. That's unwritten, right? No more than 2 terms to the 22nd Amendment, the presidential cabinet, and judicial review, which is its own topic. Bump, 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 right? Marbury versus Madison established judicial review in 1803. Judicial review is used to challenge federal law, and in the same time, by challenging federal law and state law now, 14th Amendment, you can fundamentally change society, which means that it's a mechanism of flexibility. So we hope you have enough. And I think I got to shut this bad boy down. So, where attention goes, energy flows. And that's it. We're done. See ya. Flexibility. See you later. Yeah.
Well, that was a waste of time. Janie, school is never a waste of time.
Since we have 15 minutes until recess, please put down your pencils and stare at the front of the room.